Okay, and welcome back to audio number 2. My name is Pete Renzulli for the Peak Performance from the 30-day online home study course. We finished audio number 1 talking about transforming into the trader that you want to be. And there's essentially a few different stages that each trader will go through on their path to becoming a trader. The first one is pretty obvious. It's learning to trade. You develop the required skills, knowledge, understanding of charting and stop loss orders and how to place orders and that kind of thing. You spend some time on a simulator, you do paper trading, you practice the basics of what trading is. And then eventually you get into, if you're smart, you trade small share size in a live market. Now, I personally can tell you, in my experience, in my professional experience of learning how to actually trade, I am not a big fan of paper trading. I don't believe that paper trading makes your heart beat. You don't understand what a good fill is, a bad fill is, a tough market condition, a really good market condition. You don't understand how you're going to react. If you have a stop loss order in the market and it doesn't get filled for whatever reason, there's time and place, I think, for paper trading, but I'm much, much more of a personal proponent of get involved in stocks on a very small share size basis where you can handle the volatility and kind of get behind the wheel. I am constantly equating trading to driving, where I believe that, you have your road test, the written part, which, in trading terms would be when you go out and learn how to read charts and that kind of thing. But then, to eventually learn how to drive, you got to go out on one of the slower roads out by your house to learn how to hit the brake, to learn how to hit the gas, to learn how to come to a full stop and use your side mirror, your back mirror, learn about the blind spot and all of that kind of stuff. So driving has to be done real time. You're not going to learn how to drive on a simulator. You're not going to learn how to drive or to trade, in a fake environment. It's just not reality. So I heartily recommend, as a part of your growth towards performance, I would do it real. All right, so once you start to get real, then you have to learn to develop key actions and disciplines. All right, so you got to start to work from the knowledge that you're starting to get from the book knowledge as well as in there, and then maybe even develop a trading strategy from either one that you learned, such as the one we presented to you here so far, or learn to develop your own. Now, there's actually two very interesting thought processes there, and I actually think you need both. I think you need to listen to some of the people who have been down the road before you, and then ultimately you have to come up with a trading strategy that matches your personality and your resources. And we spent a little bit of time on that in the previous audio. Then you focus on developing your basic skills. Now, again, I can't stress this enough. I would recommend you put this on your monitor. Trading is a skill. It's not about having strategies and tactics. Learning how to trade is a skill. If hitting a fastball was for a Major League Baseball player, it was just a question of swing the bat, hit the ball, everybody be successful. There's a skill to predicting which pitch is going to come next, where it's going to be thrown, which side of the field you're going to hit it on. There's so much more that goes into being somebody who can hit a fastball, and trading is the same way. There's a lot of thought process that goes into it. Then you start out with your conscious execution of those skills while in the first stage of learning how to trade. You move from incompetence to competence. You get a little bit better. You understand all the strategies. You understand, how to place all the orders. Right, you might be a little bit naive in the beginning about, the difficulty and the challenges that you're going to go through of eventually achieving peak trading performance. You might get overconfident a little bit in the beginning, especially if you're successful in the beginning. Success in the beginning, more often than not, is one of the worst things that can happen to a new trader, because then they believe trading is easy. And it's actually very interesting, because one of the things that I see happen often, a lot more often than you would think, is traders who finish the class that I teach. More often than not, the 2 weeks, especially the week following the class, they find success without too much stress. The week or two following the class. And why do you think that is? They're following the plan flawlessly. everything was written down, drilled, and gone over 8:30 in the morning, 9:30 to 11:30, 1:30 to 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock to 3:45, and then 4:15 to 4:45 every single day. You come out of that class and you are ready to go because all of the rules are imprinted on your forehead. All right? So keep that in mind, because what ultimately ends up happening is they end up searching for different keys for a lock that they already have the keys to. Now, I'm not saying the way I teach or mentor is the only way to work, but it does work. And for some reason, there's a path that traders want to go to make trading seem more complicated than it actually is, and it really all boils down from a performance perspective. Is this a good idea? Is it a good idea now? And I think the second part there, a lot of people take for granted as well, where you definitely might want to be a buyer of a certain stock, but you have to consider, is it a good time to buy right now? Has it gone too far? Has it gone too far too fast? Those kind of things. So a second stage becoming a trader is beginning to personalize your trading strategy and your style. Now, again, this is all related to performance. In a performance point of view, you must eventually come up with your strategy, how you attack the market every day, how you game plan every day. And then continually develop those skills, your knowledge, and your understanding of how your strategy fits into the big picture. And then after that, you start to develop competence in your strategy, or what I've called already flawless execution, or at least that flawless execution should be your goal. Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you're not even going to realize some of what you're doing is subconscious. It's just from practice and doing it repetitiously over and over and over again. For example, you get filled on a position to get into a new trade, and as soon as you get filled on the position, you immediately put a stop loss order in, like you should, like you planned. Sometimes down the road you get a little sloppy and you don't place the stop loss order. You go and you're looking at other positions, and that stock goes further down than we expected it to. A good habit to get into also is if you really like the idea, but it's a little volatile and you have a certain amount of shares on, put a stop loss on for a portion of the shares. You don't have to bail out of the entire thing. Make that a habit. All right. Now, it's going to ultimately come up in the second stage. You're going to have some periods of drawdown, some losses that will test your beliefs, test your resilience, your ability to bounce back, test your persistence. It's going to test your commitment. Now, for those of you that know me and know me well, I'm a huge student of Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich. And one of the biggest things you could learn from that book is that every adversity contains the seed of a greater benefit. And it really applies to trading as much as anything I've ever encountered in my life. Because let's face it, you could deal with adversity on a moment-to-moment basis, on a trade-by-trade basis. So if you take that phrase that I just gave you and apply it to your trading, that every single adversity, and let's put adversity on the side there for a second and just use the word previous trade. Every single previous trade contains the seed for a greater benefit. So whether the trade made money or did not make money, you should always be exiting every trade with the mindset, with the belief. You can learn from everything. Who knows? You might have made money on trade, and you look back on it like, what the heck? I should have made a lot more. What am I doing? And then evaluate it. Now remember, this is not about the strategies. This is about the mental perspectives. I'll use a big word here. The mental paradigm, the point of view of how you're approaching your business. All right, eventually, you're going to be tested. Your belief in your system, your belief in your strategy is going to be tested. And you have to learn from a perspective of performance. Do I have to tweak it? Or am I just not following it? Or is this a tough market? Sometimes it could be one or two of those combined. But you have to understand how to separate the difference between the two. All right, so you will be tested. Show yourself, tell yourself now how you're going to handle it. If and when I have a drawdown, if and when I go through a tough period, how am I going to plan to handle it? My recommendation from an experienced trader's perspective is cut back your share size a little bit. Cut it down to a reasonable level where you can execute trades without worrying about every single uptick and downtick in your P&L. And if that doesn't help, take a step back and say, is this just a really tough market without an edge? Or do I have other stuff in my life that is affecting how I'm seeing the market? And believe it or not, I've gone through that personally myself, where sometimes you're going through stuff personally that will affect how you're seeing the market. And if you feel like you're in one of those ruts in your life personally, I'd actually recommend getting away from the market, because it can be an extremely expensive proposition for you, and the market doesn't care that you're having a tough day, trust me. All right, so in addition to also being tested, there's also going to ultimately end up being an awareness of how important your mindset is in the performance of your trading success. Because let's think about it right now. Can we all just get out on the table? Can we all just admit the strategies to look at the market are not really that complicated? I mean, let's face it. You have uptrend, downtrend, no trend, support and resistance, and where am I getting in? Is it really more complicated than that? So if it's not more complicated than that, or maybe, of course you can add strategies and, how you choose to look at it, what time frame your holding period is, and, all that kind of thing. But it really boils down to it's going up or it's going down or it's not. It's a question of how you choose to interact with that. So if that is that common, if that is really a part of the equation, and a big part of the equation, how we choose to look at it, what's the missing ingredient? The missing ingredient has to be learning how to become a trader. So what does a trader have? What does a trader have that everybody else who has charts or financial statements on a company doesn't have? What do they have when they become that third stage? Somebody who's actually considering themselves as a trader. Well, a trader has the skill and the ability to develop and execute the strategy, right? Within their own strengths, weaknesses, preferred risk, has the decision-making ability within their strategy. They process information better, which actually, I'm going to stop and touch on that for a second. I actually had a comment to one of the traders who's in the active trader private mentoring with myself right now. And one of the things that I do very consciously when I'm working with newer traders is I talk out loud while I'm doing the mentoring as if it was the conversation that's going on in my own head. And I'm going to tell you why I do that. I do that very consciously so that my mentees, for lack of a better way of calling them, students, can learn how a professional trader thinks and assesses opportunities while the market's unfolding. I want to stay on this for a second because it's very, very important. Essentially, what the student had said to me was, I'm trying to listen to everything that you say and write them down so I could learn to think that way. And he basically said, how long does it take to do that? And my answer to you is something you absolutely want to write down. The more distinctions you could make and the more quickly you can make those distinctions, the better your decision-making process will be. So you want to make more distinctions, faster distinctions for better decisions. And the more often you can do that, the more opportunities you will be able to take advantage of. So you'll go from managing one position for X amount of shares to maybe managing 2, 3, 5, 7, 8 positions at the same time, because you can process mentally more information. Again, getting back to performance and understanding what real good mental performance is. We all see the same charts, but how do you process that information? How do you review the information you just looked at? How do you review after you got out of a trade? Do you focus on certain things while you're in a trade? I call them key observations. What are the key observations you're noticing while you're in the position? Do you have a focus on continual improvement? Top traders do. Top traders do. Do you focus on developing your expertise and your mastery? Or do you just focus on, I just made money. That was great. I'm buying. 4 o'clock, 4:02. I used to make fun of the traders in my office. Every single day, I'd make fun of the traders that would leave at 4:02, 2 minutes after the market closed. And I'm telling you right now, I knew every single person who was not going to make it because they couldn't wait to rush out the door because they believed that trading was 9:30 to 4. Clockwork. I knew exactly who was going to make it. The traders who stayed as long as they needed to develop a system or their strategy or to work on their tactics that took them closer to for themselves to become a better trader. I don't want to say mastery because that implies you're at the peak where there's no room for improvement. I don't want to put that in there. All right? Are you understanding mentally how to be flexible and adaptable to a changing market condition? And when the market changes its circumstances, are you mentally able to adapt? Can you mentally shift? If you are able, are you prepared and willing to change? Or are you going to constantly say, I'm right, the market's wrong? How do you adapt to that? From a performance perspective, how do you plan to mentally react when the conditions of the market change and you didn't expect it? Right? How do you develop experience? Developing experience in the market means you've been around long enough to not blow your account up, but to have this huge book of experience that you've written down from both before, during, after the trade, before the market opens, after the market closes. I say it all the time. The most important book you will ever read on trading performance is your own trading journal. And I'm telling you, 11 years after I started trading stocks, 17 years after I started trading commodities, I still take notes. To this day, I still take notes. There are plenty of things that I write down that I didn't notice, that I should have noticed, that I'm mad at myself for, that I'm glad that I got them today, those kind of things. You will never remember from one day to the next, just mentally. Write it down. And there's something about writing it down. It's almost like you're learning it twice. I can tell you that from teaching people. All right? Once you get to the point where you're actually a good trader, an earner, somebody who takes home money, you're going to be a lot less focused, believe it or not, on your P&L. And you're going to be a lot more focused on execution of your skill, improving your skill, getting better at your skill. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the mindset shift that you must have is the fact, I will tell you flat out, it's a fact. The only way to become a consistent earner as a trader is to have a plan, believe in your plan, which is how you attack the market every day, and focus on nothing but doing what you said you were going to do all the time. I mean, honestly, isn't that what the definition of discipline? Doing what you should when you should? Now, I hate to use the word discipline in trading because it's such a cliche, but if you really think about it from a trading perspective and learning to become a better trader, discipline is doing what you should when you should. Again, from the mindset perspective, do you have the discipline to follow your plan all the time? All right, so we would talk about those 3 different levels of trading. Where would you place yourself in that path, in the trader path? Are you learning to trade? We're basically a beginner or a novice. Are you becoming a trader where you have this big list of what not to do and you're starting to get better at minimizing mistakes? Maybe you call yourself competent. Or have you reached the point where you have the right to call yourself a trader where you're earning consistently? I don't want to say mastery. I think anybody who says they're a trading master is a fool. I have to be honest with you because I haven't met a trader yet who hasn't said he could learn more. I don't think a trader ever will because the markets are so constantly changing. All right. In essence, the key success factor is time. To go through the path from learning to trade to becoming a trader to being a trader, you need time. You need to be engaged in the market long enough to get good at it. Time is actually a very big factor in achieving success. And I'm sure everybody has at least heard of, if you didn't read it, the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And he's actually one of a few different people who have come up with the same statistic. But basically, in the book, it says it takes 10,000 hours of commitment to become really good at something. And I think the quote that I actually heard from Robert De Niro once was along those lines, where he said, "It took me 10 years to become an overnight success." Now, success is obviously relative. Somebody like Robert De Niro can say overnight success, meaning he made it massively big in Hollywood. But what about you? What is successful to you? Are you working a job right now where you absolutely hate it? You don't like your boss. You don't like working nights and weekends, and you're looking to learn how to take or earn money from the stock market on a consistent basis. Success to you might just be replacing that job. Maybe you want to make $65,000 a year. You know what? Not that much money a day, not that much money a week for somebody who has a plan and the discipline. I'll throw it out there to follow that plan. All right. So the one common factor in all of the cases of people that have reached the right to call themselves a trader, they spend long enough in the markets to develop the required levels of skill, knowledge, and attitudes to become successful. It's not achieved overnight. So the mindset objective, or the mindset goal, or the mindset to learn from this second audio program is to get to the point when it clicks for you, when you have that epiphany, right? One of the most common obstacles that you must overcome as a trader is the task of ensuring that you stay in the markets for as long as possible until you get it. And I'll put quotes like around that, until you get it. Okay? So experience counts. It's one of the most important factors behind consistently successful traders, but you have to be around long enough to have experience. All right. So what happens during this, this time period that it's so critical? Number one, you should learn from your mistakes. Number two, improve your knowledge, your skills, and what you understand, and quite frankly, admit what you don't understand. You want to learn to increase your pattern recognition. Most of us are technicians. We use charts. You want to improve your knowledge of yourself. You want to admit what you're good at, admit what you stink at. And believe me, I'm going to tell you right now, especially somebody who's been an entrepreneur for a long, long time and a trader now too. Get out of your head that you're going to trade every single signal that you've ever read in any book. It's impossible. Not only is it impossible, it's not even necessary. So start to develop the mindset of figuring out what you want to be good at. One strategy, one or two tactics to enter that strategy or to execute that strategy, and then have the right risk parameters, and then ultimately the right mindset of flawless performance. You don't need all of them. You only need a couple of different patterns to make money. All right. You also have to experience different market conditions. We call that screen time. You absolutely need screen time to be a successful trader. And then from that screen time, you need to learn how you're going to react and what you're going to respond to in those different conditions. The obvious question now that I'm sure you're thinking about now is, how long is that? How long does that last? We're talking about years. We're talking about multiple years. It's different for everybody. I've seen some traders get it, turn the corner, have the epiphany in 3 to 4 months, and then I've seen traders that finally got it after 18 months. Everybody in between, everybody has different things they're bringing to the table, for lack of better. Do you have a significant other at home that is asking you every single day, "Did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it? Are you making money? Are you making money? Are you making money?" Versus somebody who's single and, maybe 30 without responsibilities of all of those other things. And, we'll be able to learn with a little bit less stress. And I'm not saying you can't do it if you have a significant other, but it is a lot more easy if your significant other is on board with the learning process. And you guys made a really solid pact of what the path is going to be. That's a serious endeavor. You want to be profitable, and you want to move on to becoming successful, but you have to make sure that your home life is in sync with the goals that you're setting, because being an entrepreneur, which is what being a trader is, can be very mentally challenging. And I'll give you a little advice up front. Be ready for those challenges to occur and meet them head on with an unwavering passion to succeed. And never forget that passion, no matter how many times you get knocked down. It will, without a doubt, be the most valuable asset, the most valuable resource you could bring to the market. I'll see you in the next audio.